Hi, I'm Mason Duchatschek, and I want to welcome you to the Mason Duchatschek Show. I created it as a place where you can access expert ideas, strategies, and tools that can make you exponentially more valuable, if not indispensable, to the company you work for. And if you own a business, I want to help you make it much more profitable in the meantime and more valuable for down the road so you can attract more offers and bigger offers faster if you ever decide to sell it. My favorite topics usually are related to business, to people, and the leaders who inspire them. And my guest today is Jason Greer. He's a co-author of the book People Matter Most, and he's a labor relations expert featured in the Los Angeles Times, Forbes Magazine, and CNN. And I've had him on my podcast in the past, and I want to do it more often because he's just an incredibly smart guy, and I learn from him every time. And I'm hoping that you do too. Jason, I invite you today to talk about building positive workplace relations to avoid unionization. And I'd like to delve into your philosophy for creating healthy, union-free workplaces by improving management practices and workplace culture. I know you like to talk a lot about fostering respect, engagement, and alignment between management and employees. You ready to roll?
Let's rock, man.
All right.
Let's rock.
You've mentioned that great management makes unions unnecessary. Can you elaborate on the key elements of management that contribute to a union-free environment?
Yeah, managers who are transparent. And when I say transparent, I'm not talking, your employees really don't care about what your financials say. So they don't want a crash course on, your EBITDA and all that stuff. They don't want that. They want to know if you get it wrong, that you say, I got it wrong and I messed up, but here's what I'm going to do to fix it, right? They want to know that when you say good morning to them, you actually mean it. Now, they know that you're human. So there are going to be times you say, hey, good morning, but your mind's on something else.
Sure,
right?
Everyone does.
But I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to employees who said, I would take a bullet for him. I would take a bullet for her, right? And what they
Why do you
mean
think that
is
is? Why do you think they would take a bullet for him or for her?
because that employer has, or that manager has made them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And I know I keep using that term when we've had conversations over the years about making someone feel bigger than themselves. But it's, we live in this world of identity politics, right? People talk about identity politics and how bad identity politics is. Identity politics are not bad because you go to the workplace, you see identity politics all the time. I can't tell you the number of times where I've talked to employees who have no idea what their products, goods, and services actually do. They don't know
that kind of surprises me.
Right? They don't know the end result of their work. But here's what they say. Joe sure makes me feel good. I appreciate the fact that I'm on the line and Joe comes up to me and asks me how I'm doing. I appreciate that when we were short 2 people and I'm about to pull my hair out and I'm going crazy trying to figure out what to do next. And then I see Joe out there picking up boxes with me. That's what I mean by that. So when we talk identity politics is not a negative thing. Identity politics can be a superpower.
That's interesting because you said something that caught my attention when you said people working in positions without realizing the outcome or the output of their work. That'd be like I grew up playing sports, basketball, whatever. And I wouldn't have any fun at all playing if I didn't know what the score was. If I shot the basket, I didn't know if it went in, if that was good, if that was bad. I just passed the ball, shot the ball, dribble. Like if I didn't have some context of what that was, I certainly wouldn't be engaged at all. And that kind of surprises me that in this day and age, when you're out working with clients, that you still see a lot of people in roles where they really don't know what the impact of their work is. That's
You want to know why? You want to know why? Because it ain't making them any richer. Right? You look at a company like Amazon. I mean, Amazon, no disrespect, because they are Amazon.
Sure.
Jeff Bezos has created a colossal juggernaut to the point where he makes millions of dollars every 3 seconds, right? Amazon is a tough culture. Amazon's a tough culture to work as an executive, as a manager, as an employee, right? The employees understand that the boxes go out, products come in. The boxes go out, products come in. They get it. They care enough and they hope that the end user enjoys the products that just went out. But how often does Amazon actually make their employees feel like they really matter? And I mean, the Amazon HR folks, I mean them no disrespect, but Amazon is a tough culture. You come in the door, and one of the things that they say to delivery drivers, one of the things they say to line level employees, we don't expect you to be here 2 years because we're going to push you. And our hope is that you grow up and you grow out. Either you grow up within the organization or you grow up and then you grow out, go someplace else and be successful. But they
But to their
push, they
credit,
push,
that's
they
at least
push.
transparent. To their
That's
credit, that's
very
at least
transparent.
transparent. They're not making false promises or like, I get that.
They're incredibly transparent. They're so transparent that employees understand what they're getting into, right? But my thing is, be that transparent and then put your arms around those employees and say, what else can we get out of you? What else do you need from us?
'Cause no one likes to be taken advantage of or tricked or played. Nobody does. And it's when you start talking about transparency, I was thinking about this the other day. You see workplaces and environments and cultures where there's anxiety, there's stress, there's mistrust. And I'm convinced that one of the biggest reasons for that is leaders aren't transparent. We can't afford to tell. We can't tell our employees this. We can't tell our employees that. They couldn't handle this news. They couldn't handle that news. And they're underestimating capacity of humans to understand once
Right.
they know the truth. But anyway, I digress. But in absence of data, employees often justifiably assume the worst.
Yeah.
And that anxiety, that stress appears. That's why people are getting stressed out on Sunday night before work on Monday. That's why they're sitting in their cars before work crying. That's why they're crying in the bathrooms or they're calling in sick when they're not,
Yes.
because their fear and anxiety about going to work because their leaders haven't been transparent with them, and they're being forced to fill in the gaps with the information to cover the information they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And they assume the worst. And so I think I agree with you. I think that's an interesting insight on your part, and I agree with you.
Brother, how many times have you, or how many people have you encountered where Monday, so there's the Sunday, there's the Monday dread on Sunday,
Yep.
right? And it's real. Then they get to work on Monday, and Monday is nothing more than a countdown till Friday.
It happens all the time.
Happens all the time. And you could easily say, well, just go get another job. But that's not easy for people.
No, it isn't.
Look, Mason, you're an entrepreneur. You're one of the best entrepreneurs I know because you have that risk gene. If there is such a thing as a gene called risk, you have it, where you're willing to bet on yourself.
That's true.
A lot of people they don't have that. And that's not a knock on them, but they want the relative safety of working a 9 to 5, right?
See, and it's funny, just on a side note, because to me, I think of security as my ability to produce value and results in a marketplace. And it has nothing to do with the companies that sign my checks
and I think, and completely agree, because we inhabit that world, right? It's one of the things that you and I have talked about is, if we won the lottery, what would change? Well, for me, nothing would change. I might have $100
I love
million,
doing what I do.
right? But I would keep doing this.
Same here.
Right? I would be hungry. But there are a number of people who are 9 to 5 type of employees who would still make the argument that I don't necessarily have to go out and eat what I kill, but I still want to work for an organization where I can apply my talents. I still want to work for an organization where I can give my all, but that organization gives me its all also.
And that's a fair trade.
Right.
What roles do respect and recognition play in preventing unionization, and how can companies foster these qualities effectively, in your opinion?
Respect and recognition is everything. I mean, I've said this and you've heard me say this multiple times, that people will work for money, but they'll die for respect and recognition, right? So as it relates to union organizing drives, especially these days, we're seeing more union organizing drives that's around the fact that employees don't feel like they're respected. We're seeing more and more employees I'm going to tell you the industries that are getting targeted in ways that I never expected. Video game industry, right? But when you look at the video game industry, part of the reason why you've seen a rise and a surge in union organizing, or at least conversations around potential organizing, these employees, or a lot of them are contractors, right? If you have a video game that comes out, like I love Star Wars. So Star Wars Outlaws came out. I was so excited. It's a pretty decent game, right? Right? Pretty decent game. But think about the number of contractors and the number of employees that went into the production of that game. They are working overtime, hundreds of hours, over 100 hours a week, just putting in time in that game. How many times are employers coming to them saying, hey, look, I know that we have a deadline of September 18th to get the game out, but I'm worried about your mental health.
Probably never.
It never happens. Or you look like you haven't slept. Remember Elon Musk, one of the things he talked about for, especially the early days of Tesla, he slept on the floor. Not everyone's an Elon Musk.
That's true.
Right? So if you want to avoid unionization and understand that it's not always 100% foolproof, right? You could be the best employer and still get hit by a petition.
Right.
But what I generally say to people is if you want to avoid unionization, put yourself inside the shoes of those employees and remember what it was like before you became a manager, before you became a leader, before you became an executive. There was a time where you were just a jabroni out there just trying to do your best, hoping good and well that the person above you and the person who signed your checks knew your name and actually cared about you. Put yourself inside the shoes of your employees and you can change the world.
What, you talk about respect. Can you give me maybe, because I know you're dealing with this all the time, you're on the front lines of this. Can you give me an example of a company that just screwed that up, or a company that did a really good job of conveying respect, to contrast the two different ways a company can treat their employees?
Yeah, I've seen companies, obviously I'm not going to use names, but I've seen in situations of employers who I can give them all the best advice in the world. And then you get this CEO who still goes out in front of the employees and says, I hate every single one of you and I'm going to fire you.
Jeez.
True story.
You had a CEO walk in front of all their employees right before a union vote and say, I hate all of you.
True story. Now, this is not me trying to defend this guy, because it was disgusting what he said and it was disgusting what he threatened to do. But I sat with that CEO for the better part of 2 months, watching that CEO do what he had been doing for the better part of 9 years as the CEO of this company. Do handwritten notes to every single employee. And you're talking 300 plus employees, saying, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you
this
for—
is a good example. Not the bad guy.
This is a man who felt like, I have done everything I can. I have bent over backwards. I have spent more time here than I've spent at home. I've given my blood. I've given my sweat. I've given my heart to these employees, and they still continue to screw me over.
Oh,
Not just,
that guy. So you're okay. So, okay,
right?
I missed it.
See,
so what you're telling me
this,
is the guy that said, I hate you, is a guy that took the time to say, to write handwritten thank you notes and to give it all. And
yes,
he felt that he gave it all. And by the fact that they were wanting to unionize, he took that as a sign of disrespect and lack of appreciation.
Absolutely, because it goes both ways.
Yes.
We often talk in terms of the employees and managers. You got to respect your employees. You got to do this. You got to do that. There are some straight up disrespectful ass employees.
Sure. That's true.
Right?
Yep.
There are some employees who, look, I'm 50 and I was brought up that you hustle, you work, you grow, and
Me
eventually
too.
maybe in 10, 20 years, you become a manager or you become a leader or you become a whatever. But you understood there was a progression.
Right.
A lot of these employees these days, especially these young employees, they get on a job. 6 months later, they're like, I want to talk to you about my promotional opportunities. Right?
6 months later. 6 months, some of them 6 weeks.
Right. Yeah. I've often said, God grant me the confidence of a 25-year-old life coach. Right. You know what I'm
That's the
saying?
confidence of 25
Right.
years.
I mean, they think they know the world. Right. Because Google has taught them. Right.
Very true. So how did it turn out for this guy who like gave everything, in his opinion, gave everything, took the time to do handwritten thank you notes? I'm assuming he probably knew all of their names and made an effort, and he felt that their efforts to consider a union was a slap in the face and disrespect for him. And obviously he didn't handle that in a professional, mature way. How did it turn out?
Terribly. He took a campaign where we were winning. We would have won. And because he made that statement, and he made that statement out of frustration, we got hit by a mandatory bargaining order. Because the union justifiably filed a bunch of unfair labor practices because he made the statement in front of 300 plus employees. So there's 300 plus eyewitnesses, right? He ended up resigning a month later at a complete burnout. He was, that's the side that people don't see, because it's so easy to cast these executives as these evil folks, right? Especially if you happen to be a white male, right? As one said, if you're an old, rich white male, in many people's eyes, you're the devil. But people don't account for the fact that these executives, these are people, and their hearts break because they know they bent over backwards for these employees, and the employees continue to crap all over them. That hurts, Mason.
You know what? It's interesting you say it. It does. And that's a two-way street. Because I mean, I know a lot of CEOs who would fit that description. Older, white, fluent, successful, and they're amazing people.
Right. They're
And
great
they
people.
have made all the sacrifices. And for them, if they felt that their employees didn't, I'm going to use air quotes, didn't like them for something as superficial as the fact that they've been successful and their skin color is different, I understand why that wouldn't sit well either. So how do you go about bridging, or what advice do you have, or guidance do you have, or suggestions for how to help employers or leaders create the culture where this kind of stuff doesn't happen?
Man, you take those employees, and I am a huge, huge, huge advocate for taking employees in a room, whether you use consultants, whether you use your HR folks, or how about this, you yourself take the time to learn how to do facilitation, like group meetings, and you probe those employees. What do you need to make this the type of organization you want to continue working
What kind of
for?
answers do they normally give? I'm sure, I know you've been in the gazillion of these meetings. What kind of
Yeah,
things do they say? What are some of the most common things that they say?
we want cross training,
I wouldn't have guessed that. Why
right?
do you think that? Cross training? Why?
Because for quite a few employees, they're not necessarily content where they are today, right?
Okay,
Like
fair enough.
let's say they've mastered the skill sets of whatever it is within the first year.
So they want some growth.
They want some growth. They want some
Fair enough.
promotion opportunities. Something else I hear is we want to be mentored,
Again,
right?
alignment with the growth theme.
Exactly.
So they say we want to be mentored, and what do they say about that? Do they go into detail? Like, what does that mean to them?
Here's what they say by and large. It's amazing that you're spending time talking to us because I didn't think you ever saw us.
That
And
breaks
in
my
the
heart to hear that stuff. I mean, I
and
know it
then
does,
yeah,
but
but in the process of these executives meeting with these employees, and look, uh, let me couch this with, if you have an executive who's better with numbers than she is with people, don't put that executive in front of the employees,
fair enough. Okay,
right?
say that again. That is a valuable piece of advice when we start talking about creating the culture, and
Yeah,
that's an easy win for almost any company, because you
yeah,
know who those people are. You know which people are numbers people, and you know which people are people. So you keep the numbers, people in front of the numbers, and the people in front of the people. And that simple move right there can do a lot for a lot of cultures.
Yes.
That's a gem right there, Jason.
It can do tremendous things because, like, man, you're the father of a professional athlete, right? And I mean, look, you're the father of a professional athlete. There was a certain point in which you understood what your son was good at because your son started to develop skill sets within a particular athletic event, right? Within a particular sport. But if all of a sudden, like, you decide, you know what, I want to make him into the best horse riding or equestrian or whatever it is, and he's a runner, right?
Yeah, for those that are watching, my son went through. He tried lots of things that he was not proficient in, despite his effort. He was not didn't built for football. I mean, he played a few years of YMCA basketball as a kid. I don't think he ever scored a basket. He played a few years of junior football. I'm not convinced he ever had a solo tackle. I'm not ripping on my kid. I love him. He did his best, but his best wasn't enough in those particular sports. But he kept trying new things until he found out what he could do, which in this case was distance running, and that paid for his college and did open up professional opportunities for him too. And I guess you can translate that into the work environment. Like, what would have happened 100%. If he would have just been stuck in a role that required him to be a football player, which he's not suited for.
And the fact that he had coaches around him who saw his talent, right? He had parents around him who not only saw his talent, but gave him the tools to be successful, right?
That's true.
Getting back to the conversation that I had about that CEO who said, hate you all, I'm going to fire you. Do you know who was really at fault? Beyond the fact that he made that statement, do you know who was really at fault there?
Who?
Me, the consultant. Because
I
saw him breaking up. I saw how much his heart was hurt, right? And I thought, well, maybe we can use this to really convey his emotions to the employees.
It backfired.
Right? But I attempted to make him into something that he wasn't. And so if you're going to be the type of organization that gets your leaders in front of your employees to build trust, to build camaraderie, make sure you have the people who have the right skill sets in order to do that. Because employees these days, they smell crap.
Yes, they do.
Right? I mean,
what other kind of things do when employers say to employees, what do you want, what do you need? You've given me a couple good ones.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add to that list?
You ready for this? We want to know how you feel about certain social justice issues.
I don't know if I would have been ready for that. I would never have guessed that. But this is why conversations like this are valuable to me and to the people listening. Talk to me about that.
When you have organizations that, look at Whole Foods. One of the big issues that happened at Whole Foods, and this is a couple of years ago, was the fact that you had employees that wanted to wear Black Lives Matter pins, right?
Yep.
And you had an employer that said, we don't allow swag. We don't allow social justice, whatever, right?
Sure.
Or Starbucks did the same thing. They wouldn't allow employees to wear Black Lives Matter pins. Now you can say, well, I agree with that. The challenge is if you also allow your employees to wear pride pins, right? Or whatever the case might be. Now you're setting up an inconsistent messaging, right?
Or I could be a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I might want to wear some Kansas City Chiefs swag.
Exactly. This is okay to wear. That's not okay to wear. I never would have thought at age, when I was in my 20s, because the day and age that I grew up, I never would have thought of wearing something like a Malcolm X logo, even though I love Malcolm X. I wouldn't have done it. I would have worn the outfit that was given to me by my employer. If my employer says every day you wear a shirt and tie, that's what I wear. You ain't going to see no pin. These days, these employees are out and they're proud and they want to express themselves. So one of the things that I hear from employees time and time again as they're speaking to their employers, how do you feel about XYZ social issue?
And what happens next?
either the employer sinks or they swim. Right.
What does that look like?
Um, I have a client that is uh, very proud of the fact that he has donated a lot of money to the Trump campaign, to President-elect Donald Trump's campaign. He could get away with that in terms of not getting staff blowback if this was in the middle of Texas, which is Trump country. But he just so happens to be a card-carrying member of the MAGA community in Long Beach, California.
And how's that working out for him?
Well, it's working out great. I mean, Trump's probably going to invite him to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom, but in terms of how it relates to the employees, they can't stand it because many of these employees were very prominent in terms of their support for Kamala Harris. Right? We're very prominent because his workforce also constituted a good percentage of women who were very big on maintaining their reproductive rights. Right? So it's one of those things.
It's interesting
again.
you talk about that.
Yeah.
It's interesting you talk about that because, in the Gallup surveys about employee engagement, it says 16.5% of employees are actively disengaged. Not the ones that aren't engaged. They're the ones that are the 52% sleepwalking through the day doing enough not to get fired. But 16.5% are actively disengaged, hostile, causing problems, drama, like trying to wreak havoc because they're mad.
Yeah.
And what I hear is when people are like, oh, I can't imagine 16.5% of, if I've got 100 employees, I can't imagine 16.5 of them out there, trying to cause damage and wreak havoc and destroy our company. But when you put it in that context, if they feel they're being disrespected, that their views are not only not tolerated, but maybe ridiculed or worse, I can see where the only way they would feel that they could reciprocate or lash out would be to act out and cause harm to the company as long as they can do it. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, one of the greatest quotes that people seem to cherry pick Martin Luther King all the time, but one of the greatest quotes is that riots are the language of the oppressed. Right? And I'm going to say that again. Riots are the language of the oppressed. But riots don't have to look like I'm breaking windows, walking down the street and tearing crap up. Riots can look like I'm just not going to do my job today. Riots can look like I sabotage a line. Maybe I don't get the products, goods, and services out on time, right? Or I do a work slowdown, or I create whatever you can think of in terms of havoc and chaos, right? That's what they do because they don't feel like they're being heard. But also another side of this is many of these employees have seen their daddies and their mamas, their bodies have broken down over the years working for certain corporations. They realize the fact that mommy and daddy spent more time at work than they did at home. And you have quite a few employees who are like, not only do I not want that life, I saw that when my parents were retirement age, they got a clock. Maybe they got a watch, but it was get out and move the next one in. And that is very difficult for these young employees to say or to see because they're like, I'm not giving 30 or 40 years to a company the way my parents did just to end up with nothing.
How can companies balance the need for operational efficiency and performance and still focus on creating a culture where employees feel valued and respected? I mean, I don't believe those are mutually exclusive choices. There's ways to do that. What are some of the tips or insights or advice you might give to someone trying to do that?
The first thing I would say is don't be scared to make mistakes. And I know that I've given a bunch of doom and gloom scenarios here, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I would much rather you err on the side of trying to do what's right for the employees as opposed to just not doing nothing. One of the things that I would say,
like what kind of mistakes?
Changing the bonus structure. So we see a lot of employers who are working within very tight financial constraints that still want to give bonuses to their employees, but they change how employees can qualify for said structure or how employees can qualify for said bonuses, right? You do it because you're trying to still give them something, but your pool of money is nowhere near as big as it used to be to give them something, right? Try it. And if it doesn't work, just be honest with the employees before you even do it. Look, we are struggling financially. 2024 is not nearly as good as 2023. 23 was nowhere near as good as 2022, but we still want to make sure that you get something. In order to do that, we've changed the structure of this bonus, where you might have qualified for this bonus based on XYZ criteria in the past. Now you're going to qualify for this bonus based on ABC criteria. But we're going to walk you through how to still get that bonus because we want to make sure you get your money, right? And let's say that revamp of that bonus structure is an unmitigated mess. Admit you got it wrong, but still play up the fact we're still trying to do this by you, trying to do right by you. Right?
Got it. So one of the ways to balance the need for operational efficiency and still creating a healthy culture is admit mistakes. Don't be afraid to make them. And there's that old saying, you win or you learn. I guess that's applicable here. Don't be afraid to say, hey, our intentions were good. We're trying to do this for these reasons in the spirit of transparency, just like you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Didn't work out like we hoped. We're going to pivot, adjust, and adapt because we care. Operational efficiency is important, but not at the expense of causing harm to you.
Exactly. Here's another thing that employers are really poor at doing. Employers are poor at marketing, internal marketing, because so many employers are doing such wonderful things for their employees that their employees have no idea it's being.
Like what? Give me an example of that.
Like the example I gave of Brandywine Senior Living, where Brenda Bacon, the CEO, despite the fact that the healthcare costs were increasing exponentially, she and her executive team decided or made a point of still continuing to pay those premiums while not taking that and penalizing the employees by putting the cost back on the employees because they hired a bunch of line level employees who could barely afford insurance as it was, right?
Gotcha.
That's
a very good example.
Right. But they never marketed. Now, it just so happened that
people can't value benefits they don't know exist.
Exactly. Now, it just so happened for Brandywine, Brenda was so beloved by her employees that it kind of didn't matter because they knew Brenda was taking care of them. But that's a 1 in a million.
Okay.
The vast majority of employers, I think, are doing their best by their employees. The employees just don't know what it is.
So admitting mistakes is a strategy. Marketing benefits and communicating the value of that to your employees is another strategy. Any others you care to share off the top of your head that you think might be helpful?
No, I think those are the biggest things. I think that we've talked about the need for transparency. We've talked about the need for marketing. We've talked about the need to bump your head, right? And those are the biggest things that I see that are effective.
I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan, and I was listening to I think it was one of his old school CDs. Now it's all in digital, but I think I was listening to one of his old school CDs. And the question somebody asked him, of all of the advice that you have to offer people, and he's got a lot of valuable advice. I'm a huge fan.
Brilliant guy.
What is the most important number one piece of advice that you could give? And I found his answer very interesting. His answer, by the way, was raise your standards. And he went on to explain why that was relevant. And I agree with him. I thought it was very insightful, and I've never forgotten that. Given your life experience and professional experience working in the field of labor relations and unions, if you could give one piece of advice to companies on sustaining a positive union-free environment, what would that be? What is one single most important piece of advice you could give to employers that, based on your life experience and knowledge, that you think would be most useful?
I love your questions, Mason. The best piece of advice I would give is this: you can lose your keys, you can lose your sense of direction, but don't ever lose your employees. Spend time getting to know your employees. Spend time understanding what they think about when they're driving to work, what they think about when they're at work, what they think about when they leave work. Get to know them. Because if you lose your employees,
Awesome.
you lose your business.
You know what? That answer doesn't surprise me coming from you.
Appreciate you, brother.
And
Thank you.
I appreciate you sharing it. I'll tell you what, let's do this again soon. I
Look forward to
appreciate
it.
you, Jason. You're a smart guy with world-class experience, and I learn something every time we visit. And I hope that the people tuning in today learned as much from it as I did. And hopefully we can get together and do this again soon.
Hey, I look forward to it, Mason. I love your questions. I love the conversation, my brother. Thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy. Let's get together soon. Thanks.
All right. Love it.